Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be a real-life spy? Me neither. But today, we're going to talk about someone who was, and how it pretty much destroyed his reputation for all of eternity. It all started in the early 2000s. At that time, European banks were getting up to some pretty shady business. You see, the Russian mafia had an absolutely disgusting amount of dirty money on their hands, and they were looking for a weasel who would be willing to look the other way while they pulled the largest money laundering scheme of all time. What if we just took it all to a bank? Sounds good to me. And that's exactly what they did. They took 200 billion euros worth of dirty money down to their local bank and handed it off to be laundered. Sir, our institution is trusted worldwide. If we ever did anything to break that trust, it could lead to an extreme economic crisis, and we would be held accountable by numerous foreign governments. You can keep some of it. You sly dog, I'm in. Yeah. Don't forget to pay off your credit card though, or apparently you're not trustworthy enough to rent a one-bedroom apartment. Of course, with all this untraceable Russian cash flowing in and out of the banks, you can bet your sweet zadnitsa that several European governments started to get suspicious. The UK government was so dead set on putting a stop to things that they actually tasked their secret service, the MI6, to investigate the possibility of widespread banking corruption. Now, one of the agents involved in this investigation was a Welsh mathematician by the name of Gareth Wyn Williams, who was temporarily living in London at the time. And when I say temporarily living, I mean it, because in August of 2010, Williams stopped showing up to work. Now, you'd think that after a few days of no call, no show in an organization like MI6, somebody would have started asking questions, but it actually took them 7 days before they called in a welfare check. When the police searched his apartment, they found the last thing you'd expect to find in a bathtub. Go ahead and guess. Was it A, a really gross bachelor towel, B, a My Little Pony doll in a jar, or C, Williams' nude, decomposing body in a padlocked red sports bag? Do I even have to wait for an answer? Of course they found Williams' nude, decomposing body in a padlocked red sports bag. What was really weird was that the key was in the bag with him, and there were absolutely no fingerprints in either the bag or the bathtub. How could this have happened? Sir, there's women's clothing in his closet. Oh, maybe he was just like, super freaky. At first, this was a legitimate line of inquiry. The police genuinely thought he might have locked himself in the bag as some form of extreme bondage, but the evidence didn't really line up. For one thing, there were inconclusive DNA fragments from at least 2 other people on the bag. The apartment's heater had been left on, despite the fact that it would have been nearly 80 degrees out on the day Williams had died, and this had allowed his body to decompose faster than it would have on its own. And if all this wasn't bad enough, 2 experts tried to lock themselves inside a similar bag 400 times, and even they couldn't do it. Mark that as another failure. Doesn't this make you kinda horny? What? Eventually, Williams' death was ruled suspicious. The coroner in charge of the case believed that he'd been put in the bag while he was still alive, and then had died soon afterwards from either carbon dioxide poisoning or a fast-acting poison. Then, someone else would have had to move the bag into the bathtub and lock it shut themselves, although, again, there were no fingerprints on either the bath or the bag. There's no way he could have done this alone. I guess you could say it wasn't an inside job? Haha. Yeah, I should get back to work. Actually, the coroner was super angry about the way the investigation had been handled. She criticized MI6 for waiting 7 days to report Williams' disappearance, and she even went as far as to accuse them of trying to manipulate the media into thinking his death had been caused by an interest in bondage. To make matters worse, the police had failed to take statements from MI6 members, which meant that MI6 was now suspected of having killed their own man. Well, all this forced the police to reinvestigate the case, this time looking into possible motives within MI6. It took them an entire year to comb through all of their leads, but by the end of it, they had finally reached a conclusion. I think we can put this case to rest. Finally! It's obvious he was murdered. Wait, what is that? And that was that. Or was it? In 2015, an ex-KGB agent named Boris Karpachkov told interviewers that the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, or the SVR, was responsible for Williams' death. According to Boris, the SVR had tried to blackmail Williams into becoming a double agent. In response, Williams told them that he was going to out a Russian spy that he knew was working in the UK's Secret Service. Well, there was nothing for it but to eliminate the guy after that, which they apparently did by pouring poison into his ear. Now, whether or not this is just a bit of Cold War fanfiction is up for debate, but the police did eventually review their evidence in 2024. We've looked into this case once again. I think you already know. So what did the world take away from this? That Gareth Williams was just really into bags. But for real, there still isn't any explanation for how he ended up in there. The official statement is that it was an accident, but what kind of accident lands you in a locked duffel bag in a bathtub with no fingerprints? I guess the moral of the story is that if you're a loyal patriot who stands up to the Russians, you'll go down in history as a sexual deviant. On a side note, the bank that started all of this, they apologized for being corrupt and pinky promised not to do it again. And they're still around today! Anyway, that's all there is to the story. Go ahead and give that subscribe button a little kiss if you want, and leave the comment down below if you have ideas for a future video. Remember, bankers are our friends.